This video brought to you by AdamandEve.com with the code BunnyHop. Get 50% off one item plus free shipping in the US and Canada. Some exclusions apply. There are few stories about amateur developers going pro that are more inspiring and charming and weirdly hit me on a personal level than the story behind The Forgotten City. This game began as a Skyrim mod in 2015 that had excellent enough writing and narrative design to win an Australian Writers Guild Award. Government art grants, a small weird publisher you've probably never heard of before, and the additional staff of 2 whole developers to make for a team of 3 really turned a labor of love here into something bigger, better, and completely free from having to worry about being Bethesda's property. I haven't actually played the OG mod in particular. It was a few years after my time playing Bethesda mods, but during my college years, the mod scenes for Elder Scrolls and Fallout games were already cultivating a treasure trove of ambitious game writers who were realizing that the combat was the weakest link of Bethesda's open-world walkathons. Going through a high-quality quest pack like Tales from the Burning Sands for Fallout New Vegas had you doing detective work and deduction and puzzles, all for the reward of excellent writing found in audio diaries and environmental storytelling, and that was over 10 years ago, and no one back then was calling that stuff walking simulators. I remember that starting a few years later. And also over the course of that past decade, my teenage interest in Elder Scrolls lore gradually got eaten up by my current adult interest in Greco-Roman history lore because, as it turns out, the Elder Scrolls lore from that Morrowind Oblivion era I grew up with, that basically always was real-life Roman Empire lore all along. So imagine my surprise and delight at seeing the apparent narrative peak of a weird amateurish subgenre mod scene go professional by turning Elder Scrolls lore into real-life Roman Empire lore. Have you ever wanted to go through a story that proves a realistic earthly setting can still provide as much enchanting magic and mystery and as grand a sense of adventure as fantasy? This is one of the examples to look at. The Forgotten City is a first-person adventure game where most of your activities are going to be walking, talking, and occasionally following walls and checking cliffs and waterfalls for weird entrances to sneak inside people's houses and go through their drawers. You know, the stuff that were always the best parts of Elder Scrolls anyway. Like all the cute towns. Elder Scrolls games have cute towns, and here's a whole standalone game of a cute Elder Scrolls town with the kind of attention to detail that a massive open-world sandbox usually can't give their cute towns. Performance, optimization, frame rate, weird spikes and mouse sensitivity are rough, animation is rough, your sense of movement is rough, but the environmental artwork is beautiful. Showing off a vision of Roman architecture that is somewhere between the pure white marble of most modern depictions and the loud color schemes revealed by the latest scientific discoveries. The Forgotten City's statues are either pure white or pure gold, but its buildings and roads and overlooks are dazzlingly gilded with streaks of colorful metals, reflective surfaces, and trimmed trellised vines crawling up all the right places. But unfortunately, there is still an almost begrudging amount of combat tacked on. It does feel tacked. A very, very light seasoning of token dungeon crawls past the most ordinary of zombie enemies a first-person perspective can create is like 4% of the game, and it is where the weakest link of Bethesda's DNA is at its most visible. They've made Unreal look and feel a lot like Skyrim. Both games have slow, sticky movement and jumping, both games put on animatronic showbiz pizza place facial performances, but for me, it's being reminded of how much time of my life I spent crouched while shooting poorly animated zombies with a bow and arrow that I did not want to be remembering here. When you're not down underground, it's basically first-person Disco Elysium in a magical realism hard history setting instead, and that is way more of an intriguing elevator pitch. So, outside of some very brief dungeon crawls whose connecting rooms I can barely recall, this ship sails smoothly with no need to fire its guns, and a huge reason why comes from the setup of the story. Violence is not usually going to be happening topside unless something is going very wrong. You play as an unwilling but good-humored visitor from modern times, complete with dialogue choices ripping internet meme jokes from the current year. You fall down a portal into a time loop that sends you 2,000 years back to an isolated Roman town facing 2 big problems. They're trapped under a landslide or something and can't get out, and they have a classically philosophical curse placed on them from uncaring, angry gods. If just one person in this town commits a single sin, a thundering voice, a rumbling earthquake, and mobs of enemies spawn in to collectively wipe out the whole population.
The many shall suffer for the sins of the one.
To escape back to your own time period while also breaking the curse and saving the town's day, you gotta get to know about 20 to 30 characters who are full of secrets and grudges and plots against each other that you cannot let cross that line, while making sure you don't lie, steal, cheat, or strike anyone yourself along the way. You know, don't do typical video game stuff.
The many shall suffer.
You cleverly save these doomed villagers with knowledge you gain from looping their days over and over again, and the actions that progress things to the next step are usually going to be stuff like unlocking hidden dialogue choices, finding and trading items, and throwing wrenches into their schedules at the right moments. And soon enough, those dialogue choices gladly tackle the questions of what counts as a sin, what kind of god would cast this kind of curse, and what the perspective of your character's modern sensibilities can bring to ancient Roman times.
I'm guessing that Promethean fire's not for sale.
I love it. Your character being a modern time traveler in ancient Rome, it's played humorously and gratifyingly indulgently and a little bit authentically. Your character can almost immediately start arguing ethics against the first magistrate they see over why slavery and never-ending wars and treating women like property are all bad things, actually.
Of course, what else would we do with those prisoners of war who would otherwise have been executed? And besides, there are laws for their protection as well.
This is my jam. I'm getting the vibe they did their homework, they did their research, and they were having the time of their lives doing it. The upper-class patricians you'll find will be speaking from a mindset that's assuming an eternity of Rome is in the future. When you confront them on how history's actually gonna go, they have a hard time believing their empire won't last forever. They find the thought heartbreaking. They laugh at your accusations of calling Roman law barbaric out of this genuine belief that they are the most progressive, advanced peacekeeping power in the world.
When our people are starving, they are given food rations. And when they are wronged, they have the right to bring the guilty party before the magistrate. No other civilization in the world is so advanced, and you have the hubris to call us barbaric?
Their swollen Roman pride is only bolstered by the inductive logic of superstitions and strict state religions. For many of these characters, there's no such thing as coincidences, and they are not that surprised to be dealing with curses and prophetic time travelers and crazy underground monsters, of which Christians are being included into the label of.
I'm sure it's all part of God's plan for me. Oh yes, of course. A slip of the tongue.
This is one of the rare video game depictions of times when Christians were the persecuted minority. Taking place less than 1 year after the Great Fire of Rome was blamed on the Christians, a lot of the town talk you're gonna overhear are scary rumors of an underground cult spreading this ridiculous blasphemy of belief in just one God. Given the time period and the translations of the Bible they're working with, we kind of get to see a little bit of a hint of where this stuff begins.
As for man to lie with another man, he said, there is only one true God, and he laid waste to Sodom and Gomorrah because of exactly this kind.
I love this. I love this so much. The conversations in this game are so good and so confident in their exploration of esoteric topics that one moment you're having a Socratic exchange against a homeless philosopher, and then the next you're trying to explain internet memes to the temple priestesses.
The memes? What are the memes? So, a bit like Egyptian hieroglyphs then?
By the end of the game, you are going to be debating religion and the meaning of life. You can actually pick archaeologist as your starting class, and that gives your character the ability to read dirty Latin graffiti and also see a whole bunch of fun historical factoid buttons pop up everywhere. I didn't know carrots used to be purple. Here's a George tip. If you end up playing this game and really dig the harder historical aspects of it, look up Mary Beard documentaries. A lot of the pieces of historical trivia they give the little flavor text description to feel like they were plucked straight from wonderful, whimsical Mary Beard documentaries. Watch or read some supplementary material as you go through the game at the same time. It deserves it. Look up the references on Wikipedia. It is such a great time-traveling museum edutainment experience, on top of being a wild fictional time loop murder mystery too. Things are paced smoothly enough to keep surprises coming and characters developing, and by the end, the scope of your adventure has escalated to the point where some other ancient civilizations may be getting involved, and I was delighted to see the representation of some incredibly important ancient peoples that you never see in video games. And I just can't imagine the original Skyrim mod being able to have that kind of freedom of perspective and topics to explore, or most fictional fantasy settings in general. The Forgotten City so smoothly transitioning from pure fiction to magical realism is a reality check that real-life lore is a hell of a lot deeper than any fiction that's had less than multiple millennia of material to go back and reference through. But regardless of all that, the story twists and character writing stand strong enough on their own, which I guess would have been the reason why the Skyrim mod was so popular in the first place, after all. For those who give less a damn about creative spins on historical pieces, you still have good, thought-provoking writing and good, invested performances and a janky but beautiful package. But for my tastes, and how I have this big interest in the game's historical side and how well they kind of nailed it, that's turned a perfectly good dialogue-driven adventure into a potential Game of the Year contender, I think. And I think I also should slow things down and get quiet for a second. There's going to be some tonal whiplash here. Welcome to Adam and Eve, have a look around. Anything that gets shipped home will never once be found. Their shipping's discreet, it's just a blank box, but everything inside'll give your meat a good beat. Welcome to Adam and Eve, what would you prefer? Would you like a big fat dog or something small and pink for her? Be lonely, be homely, be studying the blade, but maybe now with them you'll finally get laid. Having second thoughts and then you want to send it back. It's 90 days, no questions asked, that's enough time to slack. Eliminate your shames and games and wipe away your conscious blames. A quarter of their shorter orders going to supporters of stopping HIV and AIDS in business 50 years. Get half off on one item and enjoy it with some beers. Use the code I'll paste below, they'll ship it out on comp. Just open up your browser and type adamandeve.com with the code BUNNYHOP.
Why is that? The memes? What are the memes? So, a bit like Egyptian hieroglyphs then? So your people make hieroglyphics depicting this accursed character, the one they call Karen?